morning, good evening, everyone. This is Abhinav Agarwal, and welcome to the latest iteration of the Indica Books Open House with Otis. This is where you can get to, excuse me, I feel a sneeze coming on. It didn't. Okay, let's continue. So this is an opportunity for writers to send in their writing pieces, short writing pieces, get feedback on those pieces. And how it works is that every Sunday, which we meet like we are now, and if you have sent in your writing piece, and Otis would have reviewed it and sent back his feedback separately. And when we meet, we all sit down and discuss, and Otis will share his feedback on the piece, and we all get into a discussion about writing in general, the craft of writing, and what to do, what not to do. There are certain points that he emphasizes on frequently enough, good, strong points of writing, do's and don'ts. Some of us try and follow those rules. Some of us don't, for reasons best known to ourselves. But we try not dwell on those things too much. Learning is a long and arduous process. Sometimes it takes more than once to get things right. So that's what some of us tell ourselves. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to you, Otis. I believe you do have at least one piece to go through, and we'll see if the second writer joins us or not.
Okay. Thank you, Abhinav. You're talking about the arduous nature of this writing. It's kind of, we sit here, we talk about it, and we write notes and all of that. I think finally, I have likened it to doing yoga, which, by the way, have I mentioned that I've been doing yoga maybe, I don't know, close to a year now. Oh my goodness, so good for me. But anyway, I was a mess after COVID. I couldn't even lift my arm above my head. So, and now I can actually sit cross-legged kind of for some small period of time. So but anyway, talking about writing is a little bit like talking about yoga. You're not going to really get better at it unless you do it. So we can talk all day long about what is necessary to do to, hold the pose like that. It's like, Sweta. Hi, I have your piece. I have your piece. So maybe we have a couple people who might not know what you're working on. So maybe you could talk to us all a little bit about it, and then if it's okay, I'll have you read a short piece, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. Does that sound all right?
Sure.
Okay.
So I'm working on a piece called Magics of the Dragons, and it is for the India-Cambodia anthology collection. And the thing is that this story was inspired by a specific writing prompt from the Indian Academy. That can you think of a Laura Croft kind of a story where a Tamilian goes to Cambodia? So I do have a Tamil character. Actually, I'm Tamilian myself, and which is convenient. And of course, it's for the Cambodian anthology. Some of the things that I wanted for this piece was I looked at an unreliable kind of a narrator. I'm very interested in postmodernism. I know it sounds very cliche, but I'm genuinely interested in postmodernism, which is that I don't believe in grand narratives. I believe that I don't believe in the narrative doesn't have to be grand. The narrator doesn't have to be reliable. The story doesn't have to go anywhere. So those are things that I actually believe in, and it's not just because it sounds fancy or anything. And those are some of the things that I had in mind. And the second thing is I write sentence by sentence. So I never plot, and I haven't for 10 years. I actually have a creative writing degree. So I've done an MA in writing from the University of Warwick. And so I have studied creative writing. It's my profession. I've also authored 15 books. But the thing is that now for myself, I like writing sentence by sentence. So I just let the story take itself, and that's how I write. And so I need to do a lot of editing. It's something that I love doing. So that was the background to the piece.
Okay, well, great. So, well, you go into postmodernism. When I started my writing, I was very against postmodernism, but you know what? My novel is postmodern. So, I mean, we can't do much about the fact that we live in a postmodern world. I agree with you. I'm suspicious of the grand narrative. I'm suspicious of the centralized protagonist. I think that there's a lot of harm that has been done in the universe because of this idea of a centralized protagonist, hero, who we are sympathetic for, and the rest of the world who we are not. So I think drawing some attention to that is a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, maybe, so do you see, have I shared my screen?
No, not yet.
Okay, let me share my screen, sorry. Sweta, if I'm saying that properly, there's no help for me if I'm not, basically, so I apologize. I'm not, I have to work on all my pronunciations, but I'm struggling. I actually had the same problem, even when I read my own work, I use so many words that I've only ever seen. I've never heard them. I use so many words I've never used or heard used ever. And I don't even know how to pronounce my own writing. Is that crazy?
No.
Maybe, do you see
No,
this? Do you see from 2? Maybe you could read this section from 2 down to the bottom. Okay. To the red part.
Yeah. What the magics of the dragon? I found an ancient scroll which spoke of the magics of the dragon. I was hooked. I wanted this magic for myself, the magics of the dragons. The river flowing, the river's seam reap. It is a slow day, one filled with possibilities. Meenakshi Subramaniam of Madurai is resting, and I, Chantavi of Seam Reap River, am wide awake. I long for the sun to set. Night darkness I like. I'm not a brooding dark person, mind you. I like my life energetic and cheerful, and also magical. Tell me, do you believe in magic? It is not a question from a children's book. This is a question from me to you, dear reader. This question is an important one, for I do believe in the magic of things, in the profound way in which the world goes around. Surely it has been infused with magic from the very start. I believe in the universe and in the magical universe. I believe in the magic of things, MOT. There is humanness and there is witchiness. And as much as I love humanness, I'm more into witchiness, the witchiness of possibilities, the witchiness of the general theory of relativity, and yes, mostly the witchiness of magic.
Okay, I love those lines. There's humanness and there is witchiness. I mean, I am totally convinced. I think that's right. There's humanness and there's witchiness. I love a world that can state that. And as much as I love humanness, I am more into witchiness. I totally believe that. As much as I'm just more, it's great, but witchiness is much more fun. I think I make the comment at the end that I love this world. You're talking about postmodernism, and I think that I don't always know what it means. I think it means to a degree a sense of, the way I've come to understand it is it's self-reflective. So it understands the postmodern perspective understands what it is. Like the story knows it's a story. It doesn't think it's actually a universal consciousness.
Yes.
And so it basically, it makes a kind of self-commentary. The an issue might be, not most people are not really familiar that much with that perspective, although it is definitely becoming much more a part of, popular culture. So I'm trying to think, like, when you have, our modern shows where a character breaks the fourth wall and suddenly looks at the audience, that's postmodern, right? Because they're recognizing that is an audience, whereas that was not the form before. Yes. So there are a lot of ways in which postmodernism are becoming part of our world. And it's done, when we watch it in shows, it's done in rather obvious ways. I think of, Nabokov's Lolita, for example, is an early postmodern work from my point of view. Almost everything that takes place after that has elements of postmodernism in them. I think that the reader, though, for me reading this, I don't know where I am. So that's the main problem. I need, and I think it's some sense of maybe you making some decisions about, is there a linear story that you want to tell? So I am working on something that I would consider postmodern because the author of the text is involved in the text itself. So that's a postmodern. And I draw other things into the text in order to illumine the text. But the way I've done it, my solution to the problem of storytelling is that I have a linear spine in the book. So there is a linearity that I'm working with. And in order to ground the reader on some kind of trajectory, because I think that the expectation of story is actually created, the first expectation of story is created by linearity itself, that we start someplace A, and that we basically are going to go from A to B, and regardless of what we put in here, that is a fact, basically, right? Because we're reading sentences from here to here to here to here to here to here. So there is a linearity. I think we have to let the reader know what that linearity is. I mean, we're talking kind of abstractly here, but one way to say is like, it's a journey. A person gets on a train, they get off in a city, they go down an alleyway, they, find a golden apple, they take it, right? So there's that kind of linearity, but there's also the linearity of like basically understanding what kinds of information I'm getting when. So I can begin to organize my understanding of the story with, as you say, a space-time continuum. Like, even though you, right, or your character may not need a space-time continuum, I, a mortal, do need a space-time continuum, or else I feel like I'm going mad. So
that's great.
Yeah. So it's just, and so it becomes like, I want to say I respect the process of, let's say, not having a space-time continuum, right? And writing wherever you want to and however you want to. And I also respect the idea of maybe using postmodernism, as a badge that allows you to do that. But if you finally want to be read by mortals, right? If you want to be read by human beings do live in a space-time continuum, right? In fact, or at least that's mainly how I perceive my world. I basically started here, I was born, and then I went through a linear process to be here, B, where I am now. So I do live in a space-time continuum. Write however you want, but I am going to suggest that you will need to finally understand that your audience needs more structure than you're presently giving them. or else
Yes.
simply they won't read it. That's the problem. And that's not, and since we want them to read our work, we're unfortunately constrained by this human animal that's on the other side of our art. And this is the big struggle, not to both do what we want to do, but also finally produce something that they want us to do. Right? You know, so that's the struggle. And so here in this piece, you know, I think that I don't really, right now, I don't understand. I don't have you establishing what I will call patterns. So I just look at linearity is a pattern. It's basically a sequence of events, but that's not the only pattern we can use. We have linearity with other kinds of patterns in writing also. You could be writing one point of view, for example, the witch. You could be writing another point of view, maybe the voice of the river. You could be going back to the witch, but we have to have some kind of pattern so that the reader understands that you have a purpose in what you're constructing. And then I feel secure that there is a purpose and we are going to go somewhere, actually.
Yes.
But if I don't think you have a purpose, if I cannot perceive the pattern of your work, then I don't know that you are going someplace. You may or you may not, but my uncertainty will probably lead me to go someplace where I can feel more certain. Because the one thing humans do not like, it's uncertainty. Ask Abanov.
Yeah.
I like to pick on Abanov when at the end of, it's sort of the end of something, you know. Human beings do not like uncertainty. Ask Abanov. Abanov, I will say, the most human among us. the most fearful of uncertainty among us. No, I'm kidding, Abanov. I'm just. So that's my large comment. So I took note that you said that you're not plotting or anything. You're writing sentence by sentence. And I think that's fine. And if you have this piece organized and you've written the whole thing, it might be time to apply a little bit more order onto the piece so that the reader can understand. It's not so that the reader understands everything, but it's so the reader feels secure in where they are and that they are someplace. They are someplace on this continuum, you know, this line from A to B. And they basically know that I'm here at the beginning, I'm here at the middle, I'm here at the end. They know that they're somewhere and there's some purpose to their existence. That's my big comment. But I love, you know, you got me with witch, you know, with human and witchiness, and I prefer witchiness, and I'm with you. I also do. You will have to think about whether how you want to represent witchiness as something, because most of us, we don't have an experience with it. So are you helping us understand that it really exists? Are we dealing with a fantasy world in which witchiness exists like Harry Potter? Or are we dealing with a real world, our world, that exists that also has witches in it? These are questions, you know, that the reader is going to want to know basically immediately. Harry Potter, we know that it's fantasy. So we're not concerned, and we know that magic exists in it, and then you can run through a wall. That's fine. But if you're saying that it's the real world, then you have to have real people and witches can do things for real reasons within that world.
Yeah.
And then how are they doing it? So like in my daughter forces me to watch Marvel, so I have to watch Doctor Strange. So I know all of these things, but it's like, how do they do it? Spells. They have spells, right? they have things that they use to basically create a world of cause and effect. So
Yeah.
in the real world, cause and effect still exists. And in fact, even in fantasy worlds, cause and effect still exists. So that even though it's a fantasy world, it's a world that we basically can understand because it works by the same physical principles as our world, which is cause and effect.
Yeah.
I read the spell, I can go into the time portal. I read another spell, the time portal closes. Cause, effect. It's and that is basically a linear progression. So I love because of your anthology, I'm hoping that you are going to be actually not in a fantasy Cambodia, but a real Cambodia, because I do want to read about Cambodia, but but you do what you want. I mean, I'm prepared to be amazed.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know about real Cambodia because I've not visited Cambodia, but I'll try my best. Perhaps I can try to visualize and imagine and recreate as much as possible.
Yeah, or take a trip. I mean, this whole anthology has got me. I read something last night. I'm ready to buy my tickets and go. So maybe we can arrange. We talked to Abhinav about arranging. We'll have a writer's retreat in Cambodia.
Yeah.
Did you have any questions about things that I may have? Let me ask you this. So here I'm looking at Dakini, a witch, a traditional Indian witch. Is this a real thing? Is this
Yes, Dakini is a real word for witches in India. It's a traditional word for witches in India.
And I think it's more commonly used in Eastern India, Bengal, and all, right?
And Buddhism, yes, right. And Nepal also, Buddhist tradition also is there. And it is associated with the goddess Chinnamastika because she is accompanied by Dakini and Varnini. So Dakini is also associated with Chinnamastika.
And are there people who are actual practicing Dakini, these witches? Are there people who practice this as a kind of I don't know, a religion?
I haven't met a Dakini, but the thing is that in this story there is also a Kundalini Yogini. So that is a person who has had a Kundalini experience and hence has transcended time-space continuum. So that is something that has happened to me in the actual. So I myself don't believe completely in material existence because I've had a lot of spiritual experiences. And because of that, I myself, I'm interested in witchcraft and I have been reading about it. So because of my own personal yogic experiences, actually, they're more yogic, but I don't believe in material existence at all because it has happened to me. So it does draw from my own experience in that sense as a fact. But I've not met anybody apart from myself who's had such experiences.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there are two things. So like in the US, we have people who, practice witchcraft, basically. They're human beings. They're human beings as I see them, right? So I feel like they're human beings, but they're human beings who are practicing witchcraft. And if you ask them what they are, they will say, I'm a witch.
Yeah.
That's so that almost encompasses the idea that I'm talking about. Like you have to have, in the end, you have to have a presentation for an audience that understands things in certain ways. Like I understand a person who says I'm a witch in the US, I can probably knock next door. I'm in Eugene, Oregon, of all places. We have more witches than we have, cats, and we have a lot of cats. So, but if someone talks to me about a witch that lives next door, I think about a human being who is practicing witchcraft, right? So, and I maybe you'll say I don't have a comment about witchcraft or not. I basically believe in science, probably, but I also believe that there's a lot we don't know about science. So, but I finally think that we have a human being the question is for you, are you going to be representing human beings who are witches, or are you representing someone who's like a mythical, a mythical being, a witch that's mythical, or, it's like a griffin or something, like a unicorn. A unicorn, I would say, is a mythical animal because I've never seen one. I've never seen a documentation of one. So I believe you can write a world in which there are unicorns, but that's not going to be the world that I know. So you have to make those decisions. The other thing is, you're talking about, understanding, let's say that there's no such thing as materialism. That's great. I think that can work for a character, but again, your audience does live in a material world. So you have to think about, you're going to represent something, but you're finally going to represent it in a material form, whether it's mystical or not. It's going to be represented in a material form, probably, for the reader. The alternative to that is not to use concrete things, just to use language. But the problem with just using language is that it's abstract, and abstractions don't gather the interest of a reader who's looking for a story as much as things that are concrete. I'm a human being. I feel like I read in order to learn about the world, and I learn about the world by reading about other human beings, whether they're witches or yogis or anyone else, but they do have to be human. Or even if they're mythical, it doesn't matter, they're still personified as human. I see your approach now is, you're gathering information and you're writing from the heart. So I think that that's always good. I had a professor who was my mentor, and I quote him often. He famously said, "I would have rather cut off both my hands at the wrist than write this paragraph." So I love that. But he said this. He said this about experimental fiction. He said, okay, so I'll translate. I'll make it a cricket match. What is the biggest match where you gather the most people? So, if you advertise that you're going to have a cricket match, and you gather 60,000 people into the stadium, and you walk into the center of the field and you start juggling, you better be a hell of a juggler. So I think that that's a good comment about experimental fiction, because when we present something as a story, stories are things that people know. I mean, we've evolved with stories. Stories are in our blood. It's in our language. It's in everything. So if we invite people to read a story and then we don't give them a story that they're expecting, we have to be very good at doing whatever it is that we do give them. That's the point. So just, understand that you're taking that on. My way of taking it on in my work is to make sure that I do have a linear story, a linear spine. And upon that, I put a lot of meta information. So I have a linear physical story as a base that takes me from A to B, and then I add metaphysical information into it. But for me, I base it on other texts, but it's still metaphysical.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. It's extremely interesting work. I will tell you the truth. If I were to try and lean you in a direction or not, since the Dakini and the yogis actually exist, I would love to see them written about, but that's just me. Because I do like to read reality for me more than fantasy, but I understand that there's a lot of audiences for different kinds of work. So.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was very inspiring, and I will work on plot structure and cause and effect and all of that. And thank you so much. It was amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for this work. Yeah, it's probably a true thing to say that without structure, we don't have anything. So just like that structure is, And it's basically built into the story. The fundamentals of structure in the story is that there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. It's a very cryptic thing to try and understand, but it is true. And so we have to think about writing a beginning. We have to think about drawing the reader through that middle. And then we have to think about where we're going to arrive. You know, we do, I think, need to represent those things in our stories. And when we don't, usually it's at our peril. Because that audience, they're very quick with their sticks and their stones.
But actually, sir, one reason the story has evolved in this way is because of a specific mystical experience that I had with language many years ago in 2014, when I started speaking my own language. And that language has words which are very similar to African, actually, African languages. Now, there's no single African language, different African languages. And because of that, and then that turned into English after a few years. So that language is what I'm trying to document now. So I actually, because I've studied creative writing, I knew about plot structure, etc. But I was trying to document that language. But like you said, maybe it's of no use. It's just of use to me. So I can document it for my private use and not try to also get it published because people may not be interested.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's, you know, when we're working on stories, I think we have to, so when we work on stories that are based on things that we've experienced, I think there's an important thing for us to do psychologically as writers. And what we do is we basically become a writer, and then we think about, let's say, we think about writing characters. So I think it's a way for us to organize how we deal with the material, because yes, it's very hard for us to simply write, oh, let me write about my own experience. You could write about your own experience, or maybe you could even write about your experience in your own language. But will anyone else read it? Why, you know, why would they want to be involved in it? One of my writing mantras is that readers do not read to read about your experience. They read to have an experience. So the reader wants something when they read. They don't read because finally, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. I had a tough time. I cried for years because of this. They don't care about me. The reader, the audience does not care about me. That was very, very difficult for me to accept. My mother cares about me, but the reader does not. And so if I want to be read by the reader, I have to do something for them, and they want to have an experience. The best way for writers to do that is for us to separate ourselves as writers from, in a sense, ourselves as characters, and write about characters. Because the reader can have an empathetic relationship with the character, but they don't have an empathetic relationship with us.
Okay.
It's a weird thing about human beings. So that's a lot. I mean, I think you're dealing with the right problems. The big problem for us as writers, the biggest problem for us, our nemesis in life is the reader.
Yeah.
But the reader is exactly like us. We're no different when we read things. We're the same. So it's not like they're some kind of monster. They're not a monster. They're just like us. And we have the same requirements when we read things too. So I think you will figure it out. I would love to read about those experiences too, in a way that would be understandable for me. You know, your transcendental experience, I would love to read about a character who develops their own language. That sounds fascinating to me too.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll attend your classes regularly henceforth. So I'll attend every class and I'll send in entries for every class.
Sure, that would be great. I look forward to reading it. It's the world that you're drawing upon is wild. It is something that I am not familiar with, and that's exactly what I want when I'm reading. The thing, you know, when I talk about writing for the reader, the thing that we know about the reader, it seems to me, is that the reader wants to escape their life, right? They want to escape their world and they want to go into our world. So we have to be careful to construct a world that they can go into. That's that structure issue again. If we don't construct that structure, then they have no place to go and they will not come. Okay, they will go somewhere else. They will go into a world that they can participate in, but we know that they want to flee their world. So we have to provide the world that they go into. So you have to make sure that you do that in a way that's understandable for human beings. That's it.
Thank you.
Sunil is here too. Sunil Kumar, I think we have the other piece from you.
Oh, fantastic.
So let's try and talk about that.
Sunil, if you could, can you switch your webcam on?
I guess I'm visible, audible.
Yes,
Sunil?
both.
Hi, how are you?
We can hear you, we can see you.
Sunil, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. How are you? Thanks for joining us.
Fine.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about this piece, and then I will have you read a little bit, and then we'll talk about
it. Actually, this story is about a lady, Jayalakshmi, whose father is a scholar, and she has an intricate connection with Cambodia in the sense that her ancestors, now it's a historical fact that there were Indian Brahmin priests who had actually performed the coronation of the Cambodian king 1,000 years back. So I guess that is in the entire story. This was just a short excerpt which I had mailed to you post our group's conversation with Mr. Rathul. The previous lady also. Short synopsis of the story would be that there's a curse on Jayalakshmi Vijayan. Currently she's a corporate executive in Mumbai, and she's sent on a business assignment to Siem Reap, which is the city closest to Angkor Wat, and both her father and her mother are as in scholarly professors, and they have as in descended from a line of Tamilian priests. So a local Cambodian abducts them, that is later on in the story, to gain access to a treasure, which is a familiar trope in all of these as in fantasy tales. You were talking about Doctor Strange, so Doctor Strange is going through the multiverse, etc. So it's just a trope I picked up, and it's the Indian monkey god Hanuman was also was a familiar part of tales in Cambodia, but I noticed a fact which was missing in Indian tales vis-a-vis Cambodia, which is in India, Hanuman is always known as celibate. He's a what we call in Sanskrit brahmachari. So, but in the Cambodian version, Hanuman is sort of a romantic. So he marries a Apsara. That's like a Indian, as in what do you call that? The Greek counterpart would be as in handmaidens to Aphrodite or the goddesses. I believe you got my point. So he has a son who guards the as an entrance to the underworld. Now, this the Cambodian who abducts her wants to gain access to the treasure, so he holds her in Angkor Wat, and there are a few other temples which I researched with from etc. So that is all of that is later on in the story, and eventually she manages to remember a secret incantation which her father had taught her a long time back, because she's in the contemporary material world as a corporate executive. She's slightly skeptical and out of touch with whatever contemporary as in takes to be fantastical and all of that. So in the end, she manages to break it. So
okay.
In short, that is the gist of the whole story.
Okay, so Neil, let me jump in a little bit. So, I mean, for one, what you're telling me is hard for me to imagine this as anything less than a pretty long novel. It sounds, there's like a lot of information here. I don't know how you're going to do it in a short period of time. And I think I wonder, whose story is it that you want to tell? Do you want to tell the story of this character who's in the front? This woman who basically, it sounds like she has, in a way, she's been reincarnated, but she's also able to access past lives too, and even maybe the experiences of those past lives. So are you trying to tell the story that takes place in the past, or the story that takes place in the present, or both of them? I guess, yeah.
No, actually, the entire story is in the present. There's just a backstory of a curse and a magical sort of wand. In yogic terms, that is a danda or a staff. So it's not a overtly complicated story. It's simple. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and I've managed to compress it within 10,000 words. So it's just a backstory. The backstory is just the fact that, as in 1,000 years back in Cambodia, the ancestors of her parents had the minister to the king. The king, as usual, was sort of a debauched fellow. And
okay, I'm gonna stop. Sunil, I'm gonna stop you because I think it's gonna be better. It's gonna be better for us to read it and then talk about the writing rather than hear the story. So let me say. So I'm looking forward to working with this piece. But the first thing I'll say is, like, if you come and join, I would love to just see the beginning. Just send us, the first 750 words, and we can talk about those. Send them though on a PDF. Send them on a PDF, not in an email, because that's, with what do they say, Abhinav? Too many moving parts. Too many moving parts. But the other comment I just wanted to say about the beginning here is, I would encourage you to, I don't know if you know the concept in media res, but in media res means in the middle of the action. So rather than doing a lot of buildup, get us involved in the story. If this is going to take place in Cambodia, I would love to, have the action already start, because we're really following it sounds like we're following the adventure of this contemporary character as she goes from, as you say, beginning, middle, and end. She starts in the beginning and we go to the end. I would suggest in media res. And the other thing that I would suggest from reading these sections, which I think it's great. I love that you're committing to a character. That helps me a lot. I know who I am supposed to be sort of attaching to and who I'm going to experience this world through. So that's very good. There's some issues with using point of view, which point of view is basically in writing, it's sort of like, where is our camera? Where is our sensory experience coming from? And if you're usually, when you have a centralized character, you have the point of view be the character's point of view. That means you experience the world through their eyes, through their sensations. You can deal with the exterior world, and you can also go into the interior world of the character if you want to. You don't have to. But there's some point of view issues here that I think you could probably it's really kind of, for us writers, it's kind of paying attention to it. That's what's needed with point of view, because we don't naturally have the point of view of our character unless we make ourselves have the point of view of the character, right? Abhinav, would you agree? It's like point of view is that thing that we have to determine it, or else it simply doesn't exist, because we can write anything we want. We can write any words in the universe that we choose. Abhinav, do you have?
Yes, absolutely. So before I get into that, so just one point about sending pieces to Otis for this open house session. So I say that write them in Word, obviously, but save them as PDF documents and have them double spaced, Times New Roman size font size 12, and send them as PDF, because it makes the markup that much easier and simpler for Otis, as well as sharing the feedback back. Coming back to the point of view, absolutely. In fact, I think one of the pieces I submitted more than a year back or so, you had pointed out the point of view, the constant jumping of a point of view and the kind of disconcerting effect it creates in the minds of the reader, because for 3 sentences, I'm following the story from, one character's point of view perspective. So the camera is from that character looking, towards other people or what is happening. And then in the middle of the 4th sentence, I switch it to someone else. And without any warning, it's like it takes the reader, if they're not, even if they're paying attention, it takes them a few seconds to understand what has happened. And in some cases, it can be several sentences later that one realizes that the point of view had switched. And that, I think, breaks the continuity and the flow of the narrative in several instances. Right. So I have to thank you for that, Otis. The point of view was perhaps the single, most important feedback that I've got from you so far.
The base comes to, even we were talking about this too, and Sunil and all of us, we talk about this continually. The issue for us is keeping that reader. That's the issue, because I'll give you, here's an example. So I'm reading along. The moment I become confused, right? I'm no longer fixed on this page anymore. And I'm thinking, I'm sort of in a kind of this wishy-washy place. I can start thinking about anything. I start thinking about the fact that I have to do the dishes. I start thinking about the fact that I have to pick up my kids at school. We don't want our reader to think about anything but the words that we're writing on the page. We never want to lose them. And so the same structure, creating that world, creating a place for the reader to be is the most important thing we do. And point of view is a locating device for the reader. when we take that point of view and we move it around, we have it with this character, but then we see things from outside, or we talk about whatever. When we move that point of view, it's as if we take the reader out and we put them somewhere else. In that transition period, when they're out of here and then go into here, we have to do two things. We have to make sure that transition is quick. And then we have to make sure that we actually place them someplace else. Nevertheless, even if we do it amazingly, we're still yanking the reader out from one point of view and putting them into a different point of view. So it's risky. That's all. It's risky. Can it give, are there benefits? Yes. Are there risks? Yes. What is the risk to benefit ratio? Risk to benefit ratio determines everything that a writer does, with the one thing in mind, that the thing we cannot do is lose the reader. Because if we lose the reader, they close the book and they drop it and they never come back to our work again. We, as writers, all of us, we don't have control over what the reader does before they open our book. We cannot make them come to our book. We cannot make them want our book. We can't do any of those things. We have no control over them. But when they open our story and they read that first sentence, it's on us. It is on us whether we keep them in our story or not.
Can I?
That is my fire and brimstone speech, my friends. That is fire and brimstone. That is the standard that we have. If you think it's any other standard, you are completely wrong, because every other writer in the universe is trying to do the same thing that we're trying to do. Get and keep that reader. So if we think it's going to be easy, it's not going to be easy. Yeah, Sandra.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions to understand this concept. Now, suppose I take up as an American pulp novels or whatever you call them. Now, I keep reading, say, if I like, I'm reading Lee Child's Jack Reacher. So the camera, in a sense, would be on Reacher as he goes through every town in America, or would it be on the surrounding characters? Because say if for example, if I read John Grisham, now that man tends to bore sometimes with long legal exposition, which is sort of irrelevant to a person in India. Whereas Reacher would exemplify what you said, in media res, as in the action. He's out there, he is just in the moment, as in bashing or talking to a person. So would that in a sense be an example of a point of view?
Well, let me go back to the first thing. So we have to understand point of view is different in movies and in books, because what books can do is that books can basically, both of them centralize a point of view. So in movies, we look at a screen and what we'll see is, okay, Jack Reacher is played by Tom Cruise or someone, right? Give me a person who plays Jack Reacher. The screen.
I'm talking about the books, actually.
No, I know. I understand that, but I'm trying to develop what point of view means, because there's point of view. There's right. Always point of view. So in a movie, what you do is you have Jack Reacher, the character, and he will be center screen usually. He will have the best lines. He will be doing most of the action, right? Sometimes we'll have the screen and Jack Reacher will not be there. We'll see something else. That's basically an alternate point, like an alternate point of view in the movies. Jack Reacher is our central character, And so the majority of the information is going to be about Jack Reacher. In books, it's different because books can create a point of view. They're not like cameras. Cameras, are pointed this way. They take in visual information this way, right? Our point of view in writing can exist anywhere. It can be up in the sky. It can be nowhere. We can just write abstractions that are meaningless. So when Grisham writes about legal issues, that's simply abstract. There's no point of view there. The reason you don't care is because you don't care about living in that abstract world. We can be up here. We can go down into the land. We can go to Russia if we want to. We can go anywhere in the world with our point of view with words. We're creating them with each word that we use. The words are like the camera, but they can look at anything. So we create point of view by concentrating that point of view in a way. Again, I go back to this idea of like it's a kind of writer's intentionality. Sometimes people say they want the point of view to be on the shoulder of the main character. If you're dealing in a short story, that's not a bad choice. If you're dealing in a longer plot-based action novel, you might want to have multiple points of view. The way I generally see it is that stories fall on two sides, either character-based, in which the majority of the point of view is going to be attached to a character, or plot-based, in which you're going to have multiple characters, but a more engaging plot. Those are the two sides that I see fictional stories mainly going into. Does that make sense? So I mentioned at the beginning of this class that writing is a little bit like doing yoga. You can talk about it a lot, but you don't get better at it unless you do it. So the thing that I'm offering now is just, Sunil, for you to think about the idea of point of view. Where do you want it to be? And then try and write it with intentionality and understanding that if you basically do whatever you want, you might be compromising the reader's experience with that. That's all I'm suggesting really for now. And then for you to try to practice it. Did that kind of make a little sense? It's hard to talk about the writer's. It's hard to talk about point of view in writing, because writing is much more versatile than movie making. Movie making is automatically concrete because they're taking pictures of things, right? In writing, we don't even have to write actual concrete objects onto the page. We can write abstractions. We can write the word love. There's nothing that we see. There's nothing concrete about that word. So movie making already creates a parameter of concreteness that we don't necessarily have. On the flip side, so that constraint in movies actually makes movies more effective, and it's basically why movies are more popular than books, because writers like us will so often just talk about abstractions and no one's interested in those. We're interested in human beings. That's what we're interested in. But on the other hand, writing, we have more versatility. We have incredible powers. With power comes responsibility, they say. So we have to hone those powers, restrict them, and focus them for an intention of some kind. And if we don't do that, then unfortunately we create something that's going to be experienced sort of confusingly for our reader, and they're not going to read us. Because life is short, frankly. I mean, life is too short, if you ask me. I think we better stop for today.
Right. I think Sri Charan had a question. He had sent a piece on Friday. I don't think you've got it, or perhaps you overlooked it.
Sritran, I'm sorry, I did not see that.
Yeah, okay. Probably next week then.
Okay.
Do you mind resending it to Otis just so that it comes back up at the top of his inbox?
Yeah, sure. I'll do it.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that. Sorry, missed that. And Ashwani, you had a question?
I also sent a piece on Friday morning at 6:46 your time, but it didn't feature on your business for the day. So I have resent it to you when this program started again.
Okay, I saw this one that you just sent me, so that's great.
Okay, I had sent it on Friday morning, but somehow got missed. I think.
Okay, sorry about that.
No problem. No problem.
I think that it is probably on me. I'm sure.
It's okay.
You know, there is this thing where, you know, our email, our computers, all these things, they become sort of like our brain, and it's like it's a very confusing space, and I'm getting inundated with so much spam that it's very, very hard for me to organize the things of importance from those. I mean, the vast majority that really is not, you know, so I apologize.
Vaishali, did you have a question?
Yeah.
Yes, actually, even I sent my writing piece on Friday, but I don't think I saw.
Okay, the other thing is, and Sweta, you maybe can talk to us. It sounds like Friday disappeared. That's the other possibility. Friday was gone.
Okay, I'll probably resend it again.
Yeah, it sounds like Friday we entered a wormhole of some kind. I do know that I'm a little bit of interest with the FBI. They might have simply called those. You may be contacted, Ashwani. Don't tell them anything. Tell them nothing.
I think it's magic of the dragons.
Magic of the dragons. They've been, yes. Yes. Friday. It sounds, I mean, we definitely went into a wormhole on Friday. Everyone's saying they sent me something on Friday. Friday, as far as I know, did not exist. So, okay. Well, sorry about that. Do resend those. I will try and be.
No problem. No problem. I'll resend it again.
Good. So that essentially tells us that for next Sunday, we should have at least 3 pieces to review. Sricharan's, Vaishali's, and yours, Ashwini.
And Sunil, if he's still here, maybe he will send us those first 750. When he reworks them, he'll rework them a little bit and send the first 750, and we'll read those too. So, because we didn't really get to talk about the piece specifically very much today. Beautiful. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you all.
Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next Sunday.
Thank you, Otis. Thank you, Abhinav.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.